Recently, Nintendo has announced that Advance Wars Reboot Camp has been delayed until further notice. I am affected by this, but not fussed. Not after the mess involved with Mings in the Advance Wars communities and that's been around for years on end. If anything, I can be glad for the stress relief with work of mine involving Game Boy Wars 3. Stress relief that I can definitely appreciate. Of course, that is the silver lining in that, and even that is ultimately me benefiting for the umpteenth time from a disaster like I kept calling out with the pandemic. When all is said and done, I have overdue commentary about the underlying cause of Reboot Camp's delay, the Russia-Ukraine war. The first thing I want to talk about in relevance to the Russia-Ukraine war, surprisingly, doesn't even have anything to do with the Nintendo Wars franchise. Instead, it's a topic I should have covered about it, but I had been too wrapped up in my own problems to do anything about it. One more reason I'm glad for the stress relief. What I wish to talk about is why NATO's punishment toward Russia being applied to its common citizens is a problem. It's something Double M brought up in frustration, recognizing that Russia's general populace did not vote for Putin in the first place, and therefore are not complicit in Putin's abuses. I should have at least recognized that, though it's for a reason I can expand upon this point. Reason that I told the disabilities daycare center with the Genki girl staff worker about, because it involves a past staff member, also female, somebody who I simply got along with, who I actually was born in Russia, and mentioned how living conditions weren't exactly the best there, although the only precise detail I remember her talking about was her response to bullying during her teenage years. A detail I'm remembering because I had basically rolled my eyes about it over. Actually, I think I said enough in that regard. The point is, Russia already wasn't kind even before Trump aggravated things, and the staff member is lucky to have managed to get out of Russia while the getting was good. Niels Brighton's idea of spray and pray is, for little payoff with how Putin will not be deterred by citizens he doesn't care about being disrupted, just going to prevent the entry of similar refugees. But how do you get that message across when the Democrat representatives are so intent on being the disgraces to the idea of caring about the individual that they will tune out whoever they want? That's the real takeaway. Putin is thumbing his nose toward America because of all the gross incompetence involved in the country, and useless sanctions is a clear-cut failure to help the country's case. The Republicans are elitists without question, but the Democrat representatives are no better when they want to claim to know what's best, in the same breath where they prove that they don't, which is aggravating the problem. Getting on the stuff that actually involves in the Nintendo War series, I'm going to cite first how the story of Battalion Wars is a case of harsher in hindsight, which is what particularly spurs me into talking about this. The basic story is how the adults, General Herman and Tsar Gorgy, both of whom Kaiser Vlad call out the Commandant Uvel in the audience, make war because Herman wants conflict so badly while Gorgy only cares about what he and Herman want, and everybody below the authority of both of them have to suffer for it despite having enough reason to not want the war. Does that sound familiar? And I know there are people, and I know there are more complexities in the Russia-Ukraine war than in a game like Battalion Wars. But that doesn't change how there are shocking similarities, and sadly, the people have some share of responsibility in this mess regardless. The moment they decided that disgrace to my dad's name was somehow worthy of being president for the latter 2010s. Now, I'm not excusing the political extremist I call an ex-landlord either. Not when there was more than enough reason he should have provided the benefit of the doubt with him communicating with me, instead of throwing about asinine accusations and allowed his granddaughter to smoke in the house where I lived while denying me any chance to reasonably talk back. All he managed is being a blatant example of how Democrat representatives aren't much better than Trump or his sycophants. But getting back on current events, Vlad was ranting about frontier warmongers and tundran despots turning Exylvania into their playground. Well, now we have American warmongers and Russian despots turning Ukraine into their playground. And Ukraine isn't exactly going to be based off of World War II Germany. How little people have listened to Battalion Wars, which had the sense to make it clear that General Herman is, if anything, a token evil teammate. My signature video is from Battalion Wars 2, being a rank run of the mission Scorched Earth. I can't just change my signature video to something else. I cited multiple other candidates in the pinned comment of my Metroid Fusion video where I did the secret message out, but I still would rather stick with everything involving Private Hazard. I can, however, acknowledge that, yeah, it does involve the player playing as Tundra, even if Frontier is allied with what they're up against, and what they're up against is a common threat. I want to assure you that I still protest Putin's sanctions. I still protest the countermeasures handling for being spray and pray nonsense, and I still hope the victims of the crossfire of Putin's stupidity, Ukrainian and Russian alike, can find out from this mess. Of course, the advanced source communities are in an uproar about the delay regardless. They do not care why the delay would happen. That would require them to have the empathy they don't exactly show when they provide their cultist support of Mings no matter what Mings has done. They only care that Advanced Source Reboot Camp has been delayed under further knowledge when we're only about a month away from the originally intended release date. So what do they do in response to this? They accuse Nintendo of, I wish I was joking, virtue signaling. Gods will like tearing how stupid that term is in general. But I'd rather first cover why Nintendo would make the delay. I made my point about Battalion Wars, which would have shown how I'd actually accept the delay of a remake of it if it were handling this mess. And Battalion Wars is an all-time favorite of mine. What happens with Advanced Wars involves a similar enough case. As somebody else pointed out, the first game starts with Blue Moon, the Russia stereotyping country, invading Red/Orange Star as clearly unsympathetic. Again, sounds familiar. Sounds familiar, and it doesn't even try to involve death like Battalion Wars at least attempts and arguably manages. While Blue Moon turns out to have been manipulated and the second Advanced Wars consequently has them be the good guys from start to finish, people are more likely to play the first Advanced Wars and not realize this until the damage has been done. In that regard, Reboot Camp would just hit too close to home, and its release in this would just be insensitive. This is very much understandable. Way forward, thank you for at least not promoting tribalism with thoughtless moves. You just have to address the issues involved with Mings is all. Right, the virtue signaling term. The only thing understandable about it is that it highlights how there are bitches in sheep's clothing out there, to which there's plenty of ways to do that anyway. Otherwise, it's just pessimism for its own sake, little more than excuse-making for not wanting to care about underlying issues. As I established with my points, all these people want is stagnation at best, just for their escapism, because clearly making others suffer is going to indicate them worthy of sympathy. It impresses me that they're willing to call me a hypocrite just for calling out Mings for various nastiness. Sorry, Mings Empire sycophants, but I don't rape people. I'd rather any ladies in my life be consistently happy and warm, not some cheap puppet like what Mings wants. On his own, by the way, unless you wish to tell me how he could use street monsters as an excuse for what he did for the Guzapone at a cross-country convention. Nice to see the hypocrisy insinuations in my direction, though, but it shows how you, Mings Empire sycophants, will never care. How you will believe anything, no matter how asinine it is, if it means trying to shut me up so that you can go back to being rape apologists. Now, some people might claim that my interest would be to cause nothing but strife. When I have been witch hunted, and in fact, when I'm being witch hunted now, this accusation just makes the hypocrisy insinuations even more aggravating. There's been infighting within the Advanced Wars communities in and of themselves, even before the likes of Chipface and Mangs gave the people some way of depravity to latch onto. They're proud of their nastiness. Try as I might, I can't very well expect the Advanced Wars communities to want positive unity in the least. They just want cheap laughs however they can get them, even if it means silencing people like Nibelian to avoid key issues being brought up. The fact is, the Advanced Source communities just can't take criticism, and when they do things like keep supporting Mangs and willful ignorance of his being an unrepentant lecherous scumbag, or claim Nintendo is just virtue signaling over the delay, it shows! If anybody wants strife, it's these people who want everything to be as loud, flashy, and trashy as possible, when everything is loud and flashy on its own, and all they do is add the trash. I don't even know what this will achieve. Don't get me wrong, I'd still rather make the effort to stand up to the bullies and hope that people who will care, who will listen, will see this record. But I'm on the internet when California wants to be full of shallowness that I can only outmaneuver or else I just suffer and like it. And when the internet wants to be full of the same shallowness, this is all I can do. Stand up to a problem that was red flagged by how mere association with a place like my parents' house was asking for problems. Because the scumminess of people like the advanced source communities is fully independent of anything I could be involved in. At least I can post my 2 cents about the delay of reboot camp, for all that people will listen to me